Hey there, film fans. I'm Jeff.
I'm Dave.
I'm John, and welcome back to The Love of Cinema, a pod in which we'll challenge one another to discuss movies, both new and old, with a strictly positive critical eye.
Yes, that's right, people. And we are making this a drinking game. If we ever say anything negative about this film, which might happen, believe it or not, or if we just become dickheads out of nowhere, we're going to hear this sound. That means that we said something inappropriate or that we said something negative about this film. And therefore, we need to drink because we don't want to become one of those stuffy movie podcasts.
So pour yourselves a glass and check into the Bates Motel today.
All right, so we're doing Psycho. Don't know if you heard of it, but it's directed by Alfred Hitchcock from the year 1960. John, let's give us our people some shout outs so that we can get on with this.
Let's do the shout outs. His name is Carlos Barroso. He is our beer sponsor. You can follow him on Instagram at Barroso Bar 2019. That's CBARROZOBAR 2019. And if you're digging the music, head on over to soundcloud.com/Dasein-artist, and you can download all that music for free. All of it's provided by the artist Dasein. And as always, please rate, review, like, subscribe, love, all the things. I said it incorrectly in the previous episode, folks. All of our handles are at the Love of Cinema pod, except for Twitter. That one is at the Love of Cinema. Isn't that right? I said the opposite in the early week episode.
It's in the
Forgive
notes.
me.
We put it in the notes, people.
It's in the notes. Please, please follow us. We really appreciate it.
We've got to stop doing
and,
shows drunk.
as everyone knows, I did want to bring this up, guys. We haven't patted ourselves on the backs yet, but we have obviously changed up our formatting. We are doing 2 episodes now, 2 usually 30, 40-minute episodes, and our numbers have been good. People are listening to the entire episodes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
If you're taking a chance on us and you're listening to whole things, we really appreciate it. We're going to keep trying to churn out good content.
We are not far off 5,000 downloads, actually, which is not bad for a year and a half.
Yeah.
Not too shabby.
Not even.
Let's keep going.
Yeah. Our first Valentine's Day was our first post. We'll never forget it. All right, friends. So this is part of our Should Have Seen That By Now segment where we take a movie that one out of the 3 of us hasn't seen that apparently we should have seen by now. Just to get, despite the fact that we've seen a lot of movies between the 3 of us, these are the movies that we have in this segment so far. Citizen Kane, Parasite, Singing in the Rain, and now Psycho.
The respective people as we go through.
So as our Australian friend Dave here loves the AFI list, he loves the American Film Institute list so much. But basically, this has turned into let's go through the AFI list and just make sure we've checked all the boxes here. But it's not what it's meant to be. But I think this is fun, and I think it's okay if I say this, that here John is going to film school at the University of Southern California, which is a really good film school. I think it's okay if we announce that on here. So John is good at making movies. John makes films. John has seen, I know for a fact you've seen a lot of Hitchcock movies, but you've never seen Psycho. So it's really, really funny. So I think before we even get too deep into this, also we just did The Conjuring. So if you're a horror fan and you've been around, we did the horror.
It's like going to Disney World and saying, "Oh, I'm not going to go on Space Mountain."
Exactly.
Yeah. Exactly. The Conjuring, the devil made me do it, by the way. But yeah, John, why can't you just go on Space Mountain? What's going on? Why did you skip Psycho? What is your reason for not having seen Psycho?
I think I'm just such a fucking asshole contrarian sometimes that I waited.
Give us a real answer.
I fucking did. I love Hitchcock too. Just to give him his due. Before I even started thinking about making,
it's time.
He doesn't need it, but just in case he does. Before I even started considering making my own movies, I think Alfred Hitchcock was the first director I noticed. And I don't mean that in terms of like knowing what his name was. I mean, he was the first time I started thinking about directing.
Got a weird face.
Well, I mean, of course you noticed him. He's in everything.
Yeah,
I know, motherfucker, but you know what I mean. So I started watching all of his biggest hits, basically, and I was going down the list. And of course, Psycho was way up there. And at some point, this is even more shameful. Are you ready for this? I'm ready to admit this live. I watched this up until her death. And at that time, for some reason, I was like, I don't want to watch this right now. And I just turned it off after she fucking died.
Double buzz. Jeff's just hammering the button on his end.
Oh my God.
I forgot about it in the last episode.
I know.
I forgot I can use the button in the last episode.
They got it ready, folks. So yeah.
Okay, hold on. Wait, let me ask this for real before we actually get into this, because this is available on Nope, you got to rent this.
You got to rent it.
This, people.
This is a
film that never made it to the bargain bin either. It's like still $14 to buy.
But your dad or uncle or somebody like passed away and gave you the Hitchcock edition, like collectors. You know what I mean? Like you have it somewhere in the house. Like, go ahead, John. Is it because it's gaggy? Is it because you know the famous moments because they get aired and you know the score?
Honestly,
is that part of it too, where
yeah.
you were like, oh, it's just a movie about like the stabbing, and they changed the point of view of the first, the character?
Well, do you want to? I mean, I don't mind talking about that now. Do you want to just set it up really fast, and then we can talk about that? Because that is exactly what I was going to mention for why I think I resisted this for a while, and especially after seeing the first parts of it.
Sure.
Do you want to just go ahead and talk about it?
You just turned into a guy from Brooklyn out of nowhere. So what do you set this movie up, and then we'll get.
Hey,
to the
what do you
movie
say
here.
we fucking set it up so we can talk about it?
Okay, here, I'll set it up. So Psycho is about the movie Psycho by Alfred Hitchcock. It's about fucking Psycho. But I will say the setup here, just in case anybody needs a little bit of a historical context. So we know the Hitchcock films, which, yes, Psycho is usually at the peak of the mantle, right? This is one of the first filmmakers that was like, I want the audience to go through a very serious range of emotion. So yes, he gravitated towards horror. It was all black and white, but he really thought very, very hard about the audience's emotional reaction, not just what they would talk about and not just about the history, but he wanted to evoke a feeling. He wanted the theaters. We see Marvel movies with all of the applauses and stuff. He was one of the first people that was like, I want that theater to be fucking crazy. I want people to, he had to give, at the end of his movies, he had to say, please don't spoil this movie, so that the next group of people can have as much fun as you had. Like, who does that? Anyway, this movie is actually towards the end of his career. So he was born in 1899, and this came out in 1960. And if you've ever seen him, he was a 61-year-old going on 90. So but also at the same time, just like a lot of great artists, I'm thinking of like Verdi and Puccini and like apparently only opera composers, but yeah, he had Rebecca early in his career, and he had Spellbound and other like nice movies that we know. But Rear Window is right in the 50s, To Catch a Thief, and then all of a sudden, The Wrong Man, Vertigo, North by North, Psycho. This is a person who, in his 50s, which was the 1950s to 1960, we're talking about bam, 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 bam. He took everything he learned and he turned it into some momentous shit. So Psycho comes out in 1960. Really, The Birds is the only like famous movie of his that came out after this movie. This is very high in the AFI list. And the setup for the film is a Phoenix secretary. A Phoenix secretary sounds awesome now, but it's somebody from Phoenix.
Yeah, it's not a secretary that like explodes and you get a new secretary.
Correct.
Yeah.
Mystical bird that when she cries on you, you're immortal. No. A Phoenix secretary embezzles $40,000 from her employer's client, goes on the run, and checks into a remote motel run by a young man under the domination of his mother. Bum, bum, bum. Norman Bates, the mother Bates, whatever her name is. This is
I feel
Janet
like,
Leigh as Marion Crane.
We don't need to do spoiler alert, right? Because this is old as fuck and everybody's seen at least some parody.
I would hope so, but really what this movie is you think it's about one thing. This is, again, I wasn't alive then, but from everything I've seen and read, this is the first time that a famous movie, that a popular movie that wasn't like an old short or one of the Ealing comedies or anything like that, one of the famous movies that had the protagonist die in the middle of the movie and then change protagonist. That had, as far as I know, for a commercial hit,
in fact,
it never happened.
When it was released, if you turned up late, you weren't allowed to be admitted. If you missed the start of the movie, you weren't going in.
Can you imagine turning down money because people showed up late? That's amazing.
He was like, "No, if you don't do her journey, you're not going in."
So that's the setup. So let's go, if you don't mind, going right back to John.
Really fast. Hold on. Really fast. I do want to throw this in there because I thought it was just. I thought it was just so funny. It is the setup. I think I was just trying to find it because I wanted. Fuck you. I wanted to quote it correctly. But if you go to iTunes, like on your Apple TV, and you rent this, the description says, and I couldn't find it for word, but it's basically a Phoenix secretary embezzles $40,000 from a client, goes on the run, and checks into a remote hotel with showers. Period.
What?
That's all.
With showers.
With showers. That is.
With showers.
I just wanted to throw
gold.
that in there.
That's fucking gold.
That's all it says.
With showers.
They're like, it's the movie with the shower scene. It's that movie.
We can't say what happens, but you know what happens.
I mean, this is the kind of movie. I imagine now, in our generation, this is the kind of movie where more people know that they used chocolate syrup for the blood than have actually seen this movie. Because there are so many things about this movie
I guarantee you, just off the parodies, every person on the planet has at least seen 40% of this movie.
Right.
Like the parodies and the references and stuff.
Oh my gosh. And the Bernard Herrmann score.
It's like when we were talking about earlier in the week, we were talking about The Devil Made Me Do It. The one shot where the Exorcist turns up and they just do the Exorcist shot out the front. It's like,
literally.
It's like
we didn't quote that.
Yeah,
Yes.
It's like this is one of those films that you're just every single movie is going to reference or homage it, because it's
They made a TV show in the 2010s.
Yeah, this is
about this.
So yeah,
55 years later.
Not to mention 3-4 sequels. And a TV series.
Yeah, and Norman Bates was in all of them. So kudos to that guy. It was like, fuck it. If you're going to typecast me, Hollywood, I'm going to go ahead
like a frame-for-frame remake, yeah.
The frame-for-frame with Vince Vaughn and Julianne Moore.
Yeah, what were you going to ask me something?
Yeah, I was going to ask you what you thought of this goddamn movie that you never decided to see for the rest of your life. Because you were like, I never watched a fucking movie, so even if I go to film school. I want people to ask me about Psycho, and I want to be able to fake my way through every conversation.
I mean, literally. So I said earlier I was a contrarian. And I was just an asshole and I was waiting. Some of that is definitely true. But I think one reason that I did hold off, this is a perfect example of why we have this segment. Perfect example. And I think so far, all of us have agreed we should have seen these movies by now.
Yes.
The hype over Psycho is so huge. There are so many parodies and so many motifs in everything across genres and across mediums about this, that I did feel like when I was going on my Hitchcock journey as somebody when I was starting to dive into movies, and I felt like I was discovering a lot of his movies, even though I had heard of North by Northwest and Vertigo. I didn't know what they were about. And you hear Alfred Hitchcock and you think the master of horror and suspense. In my opinion, a lot of his best movies, I think my favorite one is Rear Window, are really, really, really suspenseful, but they're not actually scary. They are dramatic and suspenseful. And I think I was a little averse to watching this one because it was supposed to be one of his scary movies because of the shower scene, or at least that's what I thought.
I mean, yeah, it was scary in the 60s.
Exactly. And I think that, like Jeff was saying, just in terms of form and structure, everybody was so taken aback by killing her so quickly.
Well, also the shower scene by 60s definition is brutal.
Look, you guys, there are 78 cuts in that 45 seconds. Apparently, I looked that up in trivia, so maybe that's not right, but that's what IMDb trivia says. Alfred Hitchcock is clearly a master, filmmaker. He is notorious. See what I did there? Notorious for.
He always travels north by.
Yeah. There we go. How many of these can we work in there? He is notorious for storyboarding. There's apparently he even.
Why am I
admitted it
drinking?
himself.
Chef, hit the right button, you loser.
That was for all of us. Apparently, I think we're all just going to drink that.
No,
apparently,
give him enough rope.
Fucking everything. There you go. We can go on forever. I actually have vertigo right now. I'm not kidding. I've been on the plane for 2 days and I literally fucking had it.
Rope. I forgot that Rope was one of his movies. Yeah.
Anyway, what the fuck? I don't even know what I'm saying. He storyboards everything, and apparently he did it for that one, of course. And, he always talks about how, like, by the time we get to the actual filming, my movies can make themselves because I've pre-planned everything so intensely.
He edits
and I don't
in
let
his
actors.
head.
Yeah, he does like enormously way beforehand. So can you imagine? It reminded me of listening to Scorsese talk about storyboarding for the fight sequences in Raging Bull. Everything was planned out. He cut that beforehand. He knew what was going to work. So it's not just that. I was a little disappointed in myself for allowing a moment like the shower sequence to be a reason I didn't watch it, when even though it is overdone in parodies and stuff, it is actually really excellent. And I think if we would have seen that for the first time in the theaters in the 60s, we would have been like, holy shit, he just butchered that fucking bitch in the shower. I can't believe he did that. Butchered her, dude. Fucking dun, dun, dun. So it really lived up to it. But and I want to open this up to you guys because I want to ask you if you agree with me. I was so pleasantly surprised that before and after that really famous sequence, Hitchcock does what Hitchcock does best. This movie is a drama. This movie is sucked into with close-ups and camera angles that make you just get inside these people's heads. And obviously the twist he does and makes you to eventually follow Norman Bates and the twist at the end, it's so intimate. So even though there's this famous, scary, bloody shower sequence, that's not why this movie is so excellent. It is the characters. It is the characters, like always, what he always does. He just did it again with
we should point out, like it's
different
30,
structure.
It's 30 minutes into the film before you see Norman Bates, and like 45 minutes into the film before you see that shower scene. Like the movie's half over by the time we get to that shower scene.
And let's talk about that for just the first 35 minutes. That is an excellent noir. That is a perfect film noir. Like everything
Actually,
about the style, the build up.
In saying that, I want to ask, what did you think about the technique of advancing the story through voiceover while she's driving? Because like while she's driving, there's this voiceover narrative, and it's the scenes that are it's scenes playing out, but they're happening off camera. Yeah, it's literally scenes playing out in her head, almost in her head, but
you know
it's
what
not.
Was so cool to me, Dave? You know what I love so much about that? Because of course I couldn't help but think about it. Traditionally in noirs, when they use a voiceover, you're watching a character in sequence, and they're talking about what they're doing. Yeah. As opposed to this, she is stuck. We are just watching her in this medium close up in the car, and she's telling you about something that you have never seen before. So I thought it was cool.
But also, it's something that she couldn't possibly see.
Right. But she could also be guessing it, though, which is cool. Like, is it playing out in her head? Like, oh, she knows that they're probably having these conversations.
Exactly.
And what is
whether it's real or not, he's advancing the plot, and it's a device that really works, in my opinion.
The tone. What is the number one rule of noir? It's creating a lack of trust in all your characters for the audience.
2-to-1
all of that stuff that she was saying.
Native rule of noir.
It's the
2-to-1 contrast for the style. Yeah, sure. But character-wise and writing-wise. Yeah, do yourself, motherfucker. Characterized and writing wise, you were becoming less. You were becoming less attracted to her over and over and over again. What'd you say?
The number one rule in noir is cast Ronald Reagan.
Jesus Christ! Yeah, that's for you, right?
Yeah, that was for him. What were you saying, John?
I'm just saying, I thought he did a really good job at making you feel like by the time she got to the shower scene, you had so little connection and trust with her. You were so doubtful of the whole situation that Norman sneaks in perfectly. Obviously, there's something wrong with this guy, but
he's also so likable.
Yeah, exactly. There's a charm to him, and she is almost charmless at that point. There's something kind of despicable going on.
He literally made you happen. Like it's almost like when the protagonist gets it, you have no sympathy left for her.
Yes. And okay, so now let's keep going. Because this movie is
Fred, she dug her own
there's
grave.
very little happening in this movie when you really think about it, which is what's so interesting. Some of the best parts of movie magic are when you can just cut away from something. Alfred Hitchcock showed you how to get away with murder. He literally in real time shows you the murder, the lead up to the murder, and then he shows you Norman Bates cover up the murder. The whole sequence takes like 20 plus minutes. And it's gripping as fuck. And it makes you all the things that you didn't understand about Norman Bates, you understand even less about him. You fear him more, and yet you start to get on his side in some strange way by watching him cover up the murder.
At this point in the movie, it's like Norman Bates covering up for his mother's murder. Like his mother's committed a murder, he's covering it up for his mother.
It is.
So you're kind of rooting for the guy.
Yes.
And they make you an accessory to the murder. Almost.
Yes.
I do feel like,
that's good.
And I'm watching him cover it up, and I'm go, wait, you missed the spot. Make sure you get that corner over there.
I know, exactly. You start. No, it's funny. And Anatomy of a Murder, right? I mean, he had already made that movie. Like he's clearly interested in making his audience feel like they're a part of the deviousness of these bad people, these gross, horrific crimes. And this one was probably the most effective. I felt like exactly, Jeff. I was thinking about every detail. I was defending him in my mind when the cop shows up or the private investigator shows up.
I wonder how many people in here turned that quickly, because one thing that I noticed from the shower scene, which again, the problem with this movie is the bits, right? You know, I'm gonna take a step back before I even get to that. And I'm gonna say this really quick anecdote. When they were doing the Sweeney Todd movie, Stephen Sondheim was in the recording booth, and the music producer said, Stephen Sondheim, this is great. And then for some reason he said, West Side Story and Sweeney Todd are your most licensed shows. Those are the two most popular shows, Sweeney Todd and West Side Story. And Stephen Sondheim said, they're the best stories. They didn't even need music. In this movie, this story is so good. It doesn't need to be a horror movie. As you said, it's a drama. It doesn't even need to be a drama. It could be a comedy. The story itself is so good. This woman who's having an affair with an attractive guy who she loves, but they're not ready to live with each other yet. All of a sudden, $40,000 in cash is left on her desk by a dickhead and a boss who is sucking up to the dickhead. So basically says, all right, pretty lady, go do this thing. And she goes, fuck you. I can take this 40 grand and I can run. In 1960, 40 grand's like $500,000.
Yeah.
So she doesn't even say it out loud. She just leaves she just starts packing a bag. She doesn't tell anybody, even the audience. And then, we don't know. We only know because we're not an idiot. We're thinking
bundle
about
of
it
money
ourselves.
becomes a character in itself.
And then all you can think about is the money. Even when she pulls into a motel, you're like, well, where are you going to keep this money? Are you going to keep it in your
well, no,
under the mattress?
The reason you keep thinking about it is because he keeps showing it to you. Like it becomes
he does it
like
perfectly.
Yeah.
He does it perfectly.
Like the camera will pan from like her dead eye to the money.
Right.
It's like, what's going to happen to that?
And I know,
just like with the murder, you start thinking even before she does it. I think I would take that money. Like he makes you start getting ahead of her, so that you start feeling even worse when she finally starts doing it. You don't have to hear her actually say it out loud. Yeah,
oh
totally,
God.
dude.
It's just such a good story. And then the shower sequence, when we finally get to it, we remember it as the and we remember it as the stabs and then the blood. It, as John said, who said 75 cuts. You said 45 seconds. It felt like 4 or 5 minutes this time because it was so drawn out. Like they didn't just kill this protagonist and move on. They really let her story come to an end, dramatically. And I'm not saying murder is good or that kind of thing, but like, and then the switch to Norman Bates is it takes time. It doesn't happen right away. Like they as careful as you can be with this kind of subject matter, a murder and then a switch to narrative, like to the murderer's point of view, they do it really tastefully to help the audience, not just to help us, the audience, get along, but to make this good story have a yin to its yang.
Yes.
I thought that's
what
I
I will say. There's a couple of things on a rewatch that just like I want to say, like when he goes, like he's checking her in at the desk and he reaches for the keys and he pauses and then he grabs the key to room 1, and in my mind I'm like, is that when he made the decision to kill her? Like there's this little subtext. He reaches for a different key and then pauses and then gets room 1. And I'm like, wow, that's like some serious fucking subtext in a performance. Like there's little things like that all the way through it. Like we all get a little mad sometimes. On the rewatch, that line really
terrified.
Yeah. It's like what's coming, and even on a rewatch, that line is still effective. I will say, a boy's best friend is his mother.
Yeah, I wrote that. Yeah,
giant fucking Tinder red flag.
Yeah, I mean, Jesus Christ, dude.
Yeah, fucking left.
I'm also going to admit it.
Dave's married. It took me a while to load it. Sorry, that's what she said. Okay, John, what?
I'm also going to admit that even though I paid attention to pop culture, I did not know about the twist. I did not know that at the end of this movie, spoiler alert, Norman Bates, the reason he's truly psycho is because he is inhabiting both himself and his mother. So when he's killing this woman and apparently other people, he was killing them as her. He's inhabiting her. He's putting on a wig. Her skeleton is still in the fucking house. Like, I did not know that.
Her up.
So
yeah,
I mean, yeah. So I feel like Jeff, what you were saying made me think that it's even grosser. This is why Hitchcock is a genius. It's even grosser that he used this very small, intimate, dramatic human story to make you think for a second, with that yin and yang thing, oh, I think I know what is happening with the protagonist now. Because by the time you get to the final twist, the protagonist is Norman Bates. Because by the time you get to the twist, what's so terrifying is that you realize you do not know how to approach a psychotic person with true psychosis. You can't actually understand how they can justify their perception. And of course, what's the rule of cinema? He does it at the very end. I'm just going to show you a close-up of this crazy fuck's eyes and make you realize one more time you will never be able to understand what is happening behind those eyes.
Also, like
it's such a twisted device.
There's so many camera techniques he uses as well. Like when the camera pans up to the door when he's having an argument with his mother, and the camera pans up, and then he carries her out, and it's a total overhead shot. And they used it before, but it's like how like that is an absolute like trick designed to throw you off.
And he does that, and he's such a brilliant use of. There's some God's eye view in all of his films, and they're always so choice. He's just such a master. He's so careful of how he puts. He's very formulaic. And Jeff, I want to hear you say, but I just want to make this point one more time, because we're sitting here talking about how human this story is, how the characters, the drama. Hitchcock even said this about himself in his interview with Truffaut when he was talking about just how he made movies. Truffaut just wanted to interview him. And Hitchcock said this about himself, that the only thing that he questioned as he got older was that he began to see his formula. And therefore, he never allowed character to develop story. He always stuck to his formula. And sometimes he questioned if he was letting characters create nuance and create something new structurally. And it's so interesting to me, because when you watch a movie like this, or those great movies that he made in the 60s and 50s, you can't help but think about how good the performances are. You can't help but think about character.
There's your answer. The answer is yes. They are still able to create. I
do think so. And apparently he was a real tyrant on set with letting them act. But my God, when he framed you in his close-ups, there was something strictly and purely human that was happening, even with someone who seems inhuman.
That Norman Bates character performance is. That's gonna stay with me. He really, especially once he becomes the lead of this film and he starts getting questioned by private investigators and people who knew the missing person. Obviously we, the audience, know that he's spiraling, but he just hangs on.
But like even till right at the end, you think he's just trying to protect his mother.
Yeah,
and even just Jeff, do you agree with this dude that just acting wise, if you were trying to prepare this role, I think everyone else in the movie is purposefully cast or directed to be in that noir kind of style, and Norman is like, I don't know, is pedestrian the right word? There's a real casualness to his speech patterns and
I feel like everybody knows
physical behavior.
I mean, we grew up, well after this movie was made, but we all know Norman. We all know
it's a guy.
We don't think they have psychotic episodes, but we all know him.
But it's a guy who doesn't know how to relate to people, trying to relate to people in a way that he thinks they want to be related to.
And he's doing everything right, and it's still not clicking because he just doesn't have the. He just doesn't have the stuff.
Yeah, there's something just underneath that stops it working. Yeah,
everything he's doing.
It's a phenomenal performance.
Is textkuck how to socialize, how to be relatable, and it still feels off.
I know Kubrick, Stanley Kubrick owns the gaze, like he does it in like every movie. But look, I think that gaze at the end of this thing, it's so Kubrickian. That is terrifying. I think it scares me.
He owns the gaze, and you got me scared for a second there. So I'm glad that it came back around.
Gaze with a Z, a Z.
It is Pride Month here in New York City.
Plural,
you just said he owns the gaze. So
dude,
I'm going to go ahead.
Shout out for Pride Month. We're so happy.
Go ahead and gush John for owning the gaze.
Psycho, the movie of gay pride.
Yeah, I'll tell you, my biggest question, I think, though, is how did we not get cameras in all of the fucking reflections that are in this movie? Like, there's mirrors, there's eyeballs, there's doorknobs. Like, it's...
So Hitchcock was a production designer. That's how he started out. And there's no way he didn't think about all that kind of shit.
I mean, you can tell he's a production designer because he uses the Z-axis as well.
What is that?
So like you've got your X and your Y, which are your ground plane, and then you got the Z. So he'll put the camera up here for perspective.
Oh yeah,
and it's something that a lot of like directors and cinematographers will only think in like X and Y, how to move the camera. He goes up.
He's like, no, I designed that thing up there too.
Yeah, he turns into a little voyeur as such.
This whole space works. Yeah. I mean, he is again, despite what I was just saying, and I feel like an asshole. I can't remember if it's Anatomy of a Murder or Notorious. There's this really famous, and this was still when he was making movies in Britain, and he didn't have all the money in the world. And he did this fucking crazy crane shot that starts at the top of a stairwell, tracks down with her, and lands in a close-up. And apparently there's just horror stories about how many times they had to do it and how everybody was fighting him on it. But it creates this dimension of space. And again, when you do what he does so well, and he is unafraid to use that kind of space.
Dude, the
when he
vertigo
concentrates
shot up
back
the stairs.
into on the stairs, sure, yeah.
When
And
the
what
guy's
does it do?
walking
Though?
up the stairs and he's pulling zoom as well as as well as tracking, and it's like,
yeah, I mean the classic Hitchcock
the
shot. But
vertigo
when he
shot,
plays with space, when he plays with space that way, it does something to the intimacy and the claustrophobia of his close-ups, which is where all of his lack of humanity lies. It's like the humanity of the acting and the inhumanity all live in the same space, and it makes you want to throw up. Even that fucking phone booth scene with the private investigator.
Yeah, it's great.
That's not even a tense moment necessarily. And I was like, what the fuck is going to happen next?
Yeah.
This guy is on the cusp of something horrible. I knew he was probably going to die. But even that
you knew
was
that
just
was the last time we were going to have that kind of thing from that guy.
exactly. Yeah. That's well said. That was probably the last time we were going to have any kind of maybe this will be okay moment, because you knew it wasn't.
Yeah,
The
I don't
whole
know.
movie,
I'm at this motel. There's something fishy going on here. You're like, there's no way there's going to be a part
Yeah.
B. He's not going to be like, whoa, guys, guess what I just saw today? There's no way that's
no. You're not coming back. You're going in the swamp.
I would highly recommend everybody just go on IMDb trivia and go through them all. One thing I want to talk about is the score, because the score is very, very famous. And apparently, first of all, Hitchcock had so much money at this point. I said at the beginning of this episode, all of the movies that came out before this, Hitchcock had so much money that he actually bought all of the books of Psycho that were in print that he could possibly find to not spoil the ending of the movie in case people found out the movie was coming out to try to buy the book ahead of time so that nobody would have read the book. That's how much money this guy had.
It was only written a year before he made this. He was on it.
Yeah. This guy doubled Bernard Herrmann's score. He doubled his salary for no reason other than he thought it was really good. And the score here, it's like, it's so great. This movie, when you're watching this, I wanted to write down so many notes, but I wrote down,
you've only heard half of it.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I'm saying. And I wrote down, there's so many tritones, but it's not cheesy, which is like a dumb musical reference, because tritones is like West Side Story. It's like the forbidden note. It's like they use it in some jazz scales, but you're not supposed to do it because it's very. If you were to have a tritone playing in your office, you would actually start to go insane. And there's like actually studies, but it's a weird combination. But anyway, he does it a lot in this. It's not cheesy. The majority of the score you don't remember.
The brown note played in your office. That's a whole different thing.
The brown note, get the fuck out of here. That was quick. I got that. That was good. The score, obviously, you know that, which, by the way, the original shower sequence was supposed to be that dramatic in silence, and it's supposed to just be the water. And Alfred Hitchcock changed his mind.
Yeah.
Smart guy. This score is so good, and you don't remember it. Like, even when you sit there and you say, wow, it's gushy, it's romantic, it has some Wagner in there. It actually has two themes. So it has the rhythmic dun, 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 and then it has these very, very lush that are very minor, but also not a lot of range. It's like a 4-note range. So you have this da 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 da. So it's really, in most cases, it's only 2 different musical planes on top of each other, and I can't even tell you.
Yes, do it. Fuck yeah.
I can't even tell you how perfectly placed they are. So even when you notice that, even when you sit there and go, oh, there's the rhythmic and then that, all of a sudden the story happens, and then the music, it's like you're meditating. It just evaporates in your mind, and it just becomes,
you're exactly right, dude. I'm going to join you in the gush here. I'm going to join you in the gush because I'm obsessed. I think you guys are probably into some composers as well for film and plays and theater and stuff. And there's a lot of different philosophies on it, but Bernard Herrmann created some of the core foundations for a lot of people about how to write themes based on certain themes dramatically, or themes based on characters. And I think this is just such a good example of how the contradiction between what he does in Vertigo, playing on the theme of what it means to be sick, love sick, obsession, doubt, and all the stuff that gets played within that movie. And something like this, which Psycho feels like a play to me. He only really needed 2 motifs for this movie, and we got everything we needed. Everything else was just sound design, basically. And I saw a piece of trivia that there were a few other moments other than the shower scene where Alfred Hitchcock basically wasn't sure what he was going to do musically. Bernard Herrmann just kept writing stuff anyway, and then he decided to add in more music than he thought he was going to. Because I think if I was Alfred Hitchcock, I would be concerned too. Like, this probably doesn't need much music. Well, I love how you said it, because you're very aware when music is playing because the way it's mixed, it's loud and abrasive a lot of times, and it's meant to be a part of what's unsettling in that particular moment. But in terms of the music taken out of context, you probably won't be able to whistle it when you're walking out, which is always, I think, the sign of really good sound designy style of approach to a musical score. These guys are on the same fucking page. Can we just talk about like the mastery of what they're doing? Is this a Nolan Hans Zimmer kind of thing? Like
yes.
the way that their marriage, the way they understand each other, I would imagine it got to a point where they probably didn't talk very much about what they were trying to do. Like they just trusted each other.
Yeah.
Herman wrote some shit. Hitchcock was like, "Oh, that's fucking great. You got the timing right."
That's fucking great. That
Yeah.
sounds like something Hitchcock would say. Nah, I fucking did it, man.
Yeah.
Good job.
I mean, come on, it's got to be there. Yeah, I don't know, you guys. This was a real gem. Every time I see, like I told you, I'm obsessed with Hitchcock, and there are still a few movies that I still haven't seen. They're his smaller ones too. Quote, smaller, maybe less production value, maybe less popular, probably less sets and fewer cast members. He is such a good director that I think he can handle the big and the small brilliantly, and he just proves to you why he is the master that he is. I also think it's interesting. I'm going to talk about myself for a second. He made his TV series right after this movie, and I did watch that when I was a kid. Alfred Hitchcock Presents. So I feel like it's a lot of the stories and the style of his storytelling. Yeah, good evening. Yeah, I don't know. I felt like I was kind of a kid watching this movie. It didn't feel like his big giant movies. It felt like something else. And if you're a freak like me and you haven't seen this movie yet, I definitely recommend it.
Dave, can we talk about the audio mix? I don't know if anything came out to you. I don't mean to like pimp you out on it, but I just saw something online that when Norman Bates was writing, "Oh no, blood," they cut out all of the low levels of his voice. So this is clearly a director and an audio engineer who are on. The audio engineer is probably like, "Holy shit, he wants me to cut out the lows."
You mean to what? Yeah,
because there was also a voiceover like the mother and stuff.
Consider when this was made, this would have been mixed down to mono.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Or stereo at best. And like now,
It wasn't Dolby Atmos.
It's Dolby Atmos now. Like,
yeah.
So someone's remixed this since, but
Someone actually mixed it. But in terms of,
they kept the original direction. That's the good thing. Like all of the original stuff was there.
And again, I am not saying by any means that we don't take stylistic choices anymore, but Roger Deakins talks about this all the time. I know I've mentioned on this show that we're kind of obsessed right now with this theory of naturalism in movies, all the way across the board. The way we present stuff, the way we light, film, act. There is this kind of thing. So sometimes somebody like Hitchcock, who is clearly stylized, I think anyone who even isn't a cinephile person would know that you're watching a stylized movie if you watch one of his. And yet we're sitting here talking about the humanity and the drama and the characters and stuff when we know that he's doing things like that, taking the low ends out. I read that he mixed 3 different women's voices together for the voiceover of the mother. And he wanted it to feel a little bit off. And clearly, again, that's a stylized choice. I even noticed that it sounded kind of inconsistent and strange, and it didn't matter at all. It was more effective. So, I don't know, man. He just, once again, I think he just proves that there are rules that are supposed to be broken. You're just supposed to do them, creatively and appropriately to find whatever the truth is. And God damn it, he did it. Let me ask you guys one question, though. The only scene that I felt like it didn't take anything away from it for me, I just don't know if it was completely necessary.
Psychologist scene at the end.
Was the at the very end when he explains everything?
Psychologist scenes.
Yeah. So what do you guys think? Dave, having seen it more than once.
I've seen it 12 times. I feel like that was
Jesus.
I feel like that was a leftover remnant of the book, and he felt like he owed it to his audience at this point to explain. Like it was part of the book. So when he adapted it, he adapted the whole thing. So I feel like that might have been just this is what you've just seen. It's almost like the wrap up from the Twilight Zone or something.
Exactly. And that's why I was saying it almost felt like one of his shows, because he often had an explanation segment at the end of his series.
I love it because I think it's my guess is that it would have been great for everybody who saw this in the theater, where they just saw this with wild incredible
Their
movie.
mind's fucking blown is what happened.
And it's almost like easing your way out of it before you see Norman. So rather than just cutting to Norman and Norman's in there and you hear the mother's voiceover and there's a fly on his mouth and he says, "Oh, I'm not going to hit the fly because they're going to say he would never harm a fly." If you've seen this movie recently, you know what I'm talking about. But it seems like it's for the people in the theater, and it's almost like a recap of what just happened. And I think it works. So when we see it now, we're like, we know, duh, we already know that happened. But at the same time, it's good to just hammer it home. Because you know what? Right now, I see a lot of gun control posts online, and people are like, well, there's a lot of mental health issues in the country. And I'm like, our mental health issues aren't worse than South Korea, who has no gun. Japan, no gun. I don't think our mental health is 80 times theirs, but our death rates are for guns. For this is clearly a mental health issue, this movie.
Oh yeah.
And it's okay to have this psychologist be like, this is a real thing. This happens. We don't want it to get to this point, but that's that's
totally
what's going
right,
on.
dude.
And I actually
the time capsule rule, you know, analytical psychology and psychiatry was kind of booming at the time. It was beginning to start. We can't take that for granted. You're right.
This is not just a scene that's like a movie scene. This is one of those scenes where it tells you this is how this movie actually is even though it's stylized and it's a horror film. This is that kind of stuff. Like this, I'm sorry, this could happen. Like it's the weirdest fucking movie.
Yeah.
But maybe it wouldn't happen exactly this way, but
I'm sure this did a lot of back road motels out of business. I'm sure.
I'm sorry, but
sure.
no, but maybe at the same time, maybe it saved lives. Now, yeah, of course, there's copycats and stuff, but
how many women stopped taking showers? How many outbreaks of scabies were there around the U.S.?
I'm sorry.
Look, you guys.
That happens.
Sorry, I said booming. I meant beginning. Psychiatry was beginning at that time, so the explanation was necessary. And I think you're right, Jeff.
No, but you're right. A lot of people did cast.
It's interesting that he cast a character who's a psychiatrist, psychologist. I can't remember which title he had. As almost, if I were casting him, that man would be a choice for me as a detective or a private investigator. His type was not. He didn't scream doctor to me, and I thought that was cool too. That you still felt like you had a little bit of a distance as kind of an investigator,
right?
So that when you do finally cut back into Norman, you get that thing I was talking about where you feel like, oh my God, I'm stuck in the same room with him.
Yeah.
And I thought I knew him, but I don't know him at all.
Yeah.
And I'm fucking terrified.
Yeah.
And then they do that
like
whole
such a nice
thing.
guy. It's like nope, he needs to be locked away forever.
Yeah.
Quentin Tarantino said this before, and I don't think we can underestimate this. There was a time when Alfred Hitchcock was the most notable artist on planet Earth. If he released a movie, everybody who could access a movie theater saw it. Yeah. Like he was one of the biggest names on Earth.
Yeah.
And so, dealing with an issue like this in his brilliant style, to just put it in front of your face and make you actually have to confront that. I just don't think we can take it for granted enough how unsettling it must have been in 1960.
I think that's
1960, right?
The best thing to end on.
Yeah, I think so too. This has been fun. Thank you so much for joining us. Psycho is available for rent, or if it's a part of a Hitchcock collection that you have lying around, please try to find a way to see this film.
Yes.
Maybe it will be decommodified at some point in the future, and you can come back to this episode whenever you're ready. But thank you guys so much. We're going to do another quick round of what you've been watching or any recommendations here in the present, which for us is June 2021. Dave, anything else you want to shout out that you didn't shout out in our Conjuring?
No. Actually, I was on vacation this week, so I haven't even watched Loki, but I will say Loki was awesome, preemptively.
Yes, cool.
Yeah.
John?
I am still in the UK for anyone who listened to the last episode. So now I'm going to recommend Peaky Blinders season 2 because I'm
okay, great.
in the middle of that.
I still say Hacks on HBO Max, but I also did watch the Friends reunion, which was both very weird.
Thank you. I did too. I watched that too.
It was very weird, but also really great at the same time, right? Wasn't it kind of
What
weird?
did you think was weird about it? Just curious.
They aged.
Oh, come on. I know.
No. I'm not putting it down, but here's what I mean. Somebody asked Phoebe, well, they asked, of course, Lisa Kudrow, do you guys want to do a reunion? And Lisa Kudrow was like, what the fuck is wrong with you people? Well, look at, like, it's been 20 years since we finished. Like, we can't, no, we wouldn't even be the same characters. It would be like Led Zeppelin trying to start over again. Like, come on, guys. Like, we're in different worlds. We're in a different universe now. That show
You
was
can't
20
go home
years.
again, dude. Yeah,
They could have filmed that show twice.
Well, you can.
Since
You just
they
can't
wrapped.
shop there.
So anyway, no, I'm not hating on, I'm not ageist or anything, but it was strange in the sense that they grew out of their characters, and that's okay. But it's watching them do it was really touching and really moving. But the fact that it's still a living, breathing thing, Friends, was cool. But it was almost like I didn't get the sense that they wanted it to be over. It's like they made the reunion, they wanted it to live on, which is great. But they wanted it to live on in the future. And that was a place that for some reason was a little strange for me.
Wait, who do you think wanted it to live on?
Just like the producers of the show and like, you know, I'm sure like,
Well, of course they did.
yeah. And it's going to go
Making
on
money.
in residuals and everything, but like, I don't know.
No, she made that comment about how the creators, they wanted to end it because if they had done it again, they would have to unravel their lives and stuff. I know what you mean, but I do think
they're all
it's
still around, and they're always going to be friends as long as they're around. You know what I mean? It's not like the Beatles where we're just like, all right, well, two are gone and two are still here. Like, I know,
Look, I
that,
think
I know,
this
I
says-
know
I
that
think
sounds
this-
morbid, but this is history we're talking about.
But it's also like that they represent that period in your life where your friends or your family, and I think that's why it's weird because like every time you think about going back to your 20s or your teens or whenever that period of time was for you, it's almost a little unsettling to think about pivoting and looking over your shoulder when, you know, it doesn't work anymore and you're not supposed to. That being said, I definitely started episode 1 as soon as that was over. I was like, oh, I haven't watched this show in a while and I'm enjoying it. But
Right.
I'm
yeah,
sure a
I'm
lot
glad
of
you
it
brought
is.
that up.
It was cool. It was
What
cool.
are we
Anyway,
doing next week, you guys?
Dave?
Well, next week we're doing 2. I should have seen it by now because we're in the middle of like a dull spot, I guess, in the new release schedule. So we're waiting for
Because
Marvel
I'm
to
gone
get
and
the
the
shit
new
together.
release. I'm sorry.
No, well, I mean, Black Widow
need
doesn't come out for
Marvel
another
to
2
give us
weeks.
new movies.
But
Fuck
we're
yeah,
doing
Black Widow.
a film I have only seen the first 10 minutes of, The Social Network.
Nice.
It's a good opening
2008.
scene. Good
Yes,
opening scene.
and we're doing one that was nominated on our little questionnaire that we have on our Facebook page. If anyone wants to drop over and add to it, it's Reservoir Dogs.
Never
That
heard
was
of it.
submitted by our friend John Casey Barrett. We are going to be doing Reservoir Dogs, dude. Fuck
Yeah,
yes.
and,
Quentin Tarantino's first directorial feature.
Yeah. All right.
Dave, you're not excited. I see you just shook your head.
No, I'm
motherfucker.
fine. I'm fine. I haven't seen the whole thing either. I've seen like 2 scenes out of it. So yeah,
Think
I'm
of
on
it
board.
this way: it's the first Tarantino movie, so you don't know you dislike him yet. How about that?
That's right. How about that? All right, friends. Thank you so much for staying with us. Thank you so much. Please find us and subscribe as always, and we will see you next week. Thank you, Phil Fins.